1965 dawned in South Asia, a region still deeply scarred and haunted by the trauma of partition. The pain and displacement were still fresh in the collective memory. The 1947 division of British India violently and abruptly created two new nations, India and Pakistan, but left deep wounds that refused to heal. Millions were displaced from their ancestral homes, becoming refugees overnight, and horrific violence claimed countless lives, leaving communities shattered and broken. The raw scars of partition indelibly shaped the tense and often hostile relationship between the two newly formed nations. Trust was a rare commodity. Suspicion and mistrust, unfortunately, were all too common. 18 years after the hard-won independence, numerous unresolved issues continued to linger like festering sores. Borders remained fiercely contested and undefined in many areas. Assets were bitterly disputed, and vital water resources became a constant source of friction and potential conflict. Above all other points of contention, Kashmir remained the primary flashpoint. Both countries laid claim to the entirety of the picturesque region, inextricably tying it to their very national identities and sense of self. The seemingly fragile peace of the early 1960s deceptively masked a state of constant underlying tension. Minor skirmishes regularly flared up along the highly militarized borders, and both sides steadily ramped up their military spending in a dangerous arms race. The painful memory of the First Kashmir War was still fresh in the minds of leaders and citizens alike, ultimately ending in a fragile ceasefire agreement, but certainly not a lasting or comprehensive solution. Kashmir remained a divided territory, satisfying absolutely no one involved. By the year 1965, the overall atmosphere was undeniably volatile and dangerous. A recent armed conflict in the desolate Rann of Kutch region, which was tentatively resolved through British diplomatic mediation, only served to heighten existing anxieties and fuel further military preparations. Pakistan's leadership saw a potential opportunity in what they perceived as Indian weakness and internal divisions. India, on the other hand, was absolutely determined to defend its territorial integrity at all costs. Both nations, fueled by national pride and perceived grievances, felt increasingly emboldened to act, thus setting the stage for a much larger and far more devastating conflict to erupt. The long and bitter legacy of partition was tragically about to erupt once more in a new and terrible form. The entire world watched with growing apprehension as the Indian subcontinent edged ever closer to the brink of all-out war. The unresolved and painful past was poised to tragically shape a very dangerous and uncertain present. The next bloody chapter in the ongoing India-Pakistan rivalry was now undeniably about to begin. The dawn of 1965, therefore, was anything but peaceful. It was a tense and ominous prelude to war. Kashmir, a land of immense beauty and strategic importance, was undeniably the heart of the 1965 conflict. Its fate would determine the course of relations between India and Pakistan for decades to come. At partition in 1947, its Hindu ruler Maharaja Hari Singh faced a difficult decision. Ultimately, he acceded to India. This decision came after a Pakistani-backed tribal invasion, which further complicated the already tense situation. India promised a plebiscite to allow the Kashmiri people to decide their own future, a promise that, unfortunately, never came to fruition. Pakistan, viewing the situation through a different lens, saw Kashmir as rightfully theirs, a natural extension of their nation. India, on the other hand, firmly maintained that Kashmir was an integral and inseparable part of its nation, a position they were unwilling to compromise on. UN resolutions seeking a peaceful resolution called for a ceasefire and a plebiscite to determine the will of the Kashmiri people. However, despite numerous attempts at negotiation, neither side could agree on the specific terms and conditions for holding such a plebiscite. This persistent deadlock deeply poisoned relations between the two nations, creating an atmosphere of mistrust and animosity. The unresolved dispute kept both militaries on high alert, with constant patrols and heightened security measures along the line of control. In August 1965, fueled by a desire to change the status quo, Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, a covert military operation. This involved sending specially trained infiltrators into Indian-administered Kashmir with the aim of destabilizing the region. The primary objective was to spark a widespread uprising against Indian rule, hoping to force a resolution in Pakistan's favor. Leaders in Pakistan firmly believed that the Kashmiri population, largely Muslim, would readily revolt against what they perceived as Indian oppression. Furthermore, they assessed that India was particularly vulnerable at this time, still recovering from its recent and humiliating defeat in the 1962 war with China. But the plan failed to achieve its objectives. The expected widespread uprising never materialized, much to the disappointment of Pakistani planners. Contrary to expectations, many Kashmiris, instead of joining the infiltrators, reported their presence and activities to Indian authorities. The Indian army, alerted to the infiltration, responded swiftly and decisively to contain the situation. They focused on sealing off all potential escape routes for the infiltrators, preventing them from retreating back into Pakistan. A large-scale operation was launched to systematically hunt down and apprehend the infiltrators who had managed to cross the border. Operation Gibraltar's ultimate failure represented a major strategic setback and a significant embarrassment for Pakistan's leadership. More significantly, it also triggered a much wider and more dangerous conflict between the two nations, escalating tensions to a breaking point. India, no longer willing to tolerate the incursions, prepared to strike back across the international border in retaliation. The initial gamble in Kashmir had dramatically backfired, leading to a far more perilous situation than Pakistan had anticipated. As the threat of full-scale war loomed large, the civilian population in both countries braced themselves for the inevitable conflict. The seeds of conflict, sown long ago, had now grown into a full-blown crisis, threatening to engulf the entire region in a devastating war. The international community watched with growing concern as the world's attention turned to the unfolding events on the Indian subcontinent. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks would irrevocably change the course of history for both India and Pakistan. The war was now poised to escalate far beyond the confines of Kashmir, threatening to engulf the entire region in a devastating conflict. Operation Gibraltar's failure was a significant setback, leading to a rapid and dangerous escalation of tensions between the two nations. The initial plan had backfired spectacularly. India retaliated swiftly and decisively by launching a large-scale offensive across the Punjab border, aiming to strike at the heart of Pakistan. On September 6, 1965, Indian forces targeted Lahore, a major Pakistani city, in a bold and aggressive move. The conflict rapidly expanded from the disputed territory of Kashmir to a full-scale war, engulfing a wider geographical area and escalating the stakes dramatically. The vast plains of Punjab became the stage for some of the largest and most intense tank battles seen since the end of World War II, a clash of steel and firepower. At the pivotal Battle of Asal-Uttar, Indian forces, though seemingly outgunned by Pakistan's superior Patton tanks, prepared a cunning defense. They strategically used flooded fields to bog down the advancing enemy armor, turning the terrain into a deadly trap. In this chaotic environment, Havildar Abdul Hamid emerged as a true legend, a symbol of courage and selflessness. He single-handedly destroyed several Pakistani tanks with unwavering bravery before ultimately falling in battle, a sacrifice that would not be forgotten. His extraordinary bravery and sacrifice turned the tide of the battle, earning him posthumously India's highest military honor, the Paramvir Chakra. The area where these tanks were destroyed became known as Patton Nagar, a grim and fitting name meaning the graveyard of Pattons. Further north, in the Sialkot sector, fierce and relentless tank battles raged at Philora and Chawinda, two key strategic locations. These battles were characterized by intense fighting and heavy losses on both sides, a testament to the ferocity of the conflict. The fighting across the border was brutal, often descending into close-quarters combat, pushing soldiers to their physical and mental limits. The relentless pressure and constant threat of danger tested the resolve of soldiers on both sides, pushing them to their breaking points. As the war dragged on, both armies suffered significant casualties, a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. The war was no longer a distant dispute debated in political circles. It was a harsh and unforgiving reality for thousands of soldiers on the front lines. In the face of adversity, acts of extraordinary courage and selfless sacrifice became commonplace, defining the spirit of the conflict. The cost of the war, measured in lives lost and equipment destroyed, mounted rapidly, placing an immense strain on both nations. The ultimate outcome of the war would be decided not just by strategic planning and military might, but by the unwavering determination and resilience of the soldiers who fought on the ground, enduring unimaginable hardships. The subcontinent was now completely engulfed in the raging flames of battle, a landscape scarred by destruction and loss. The world watched anxiously with growing concern as the intense conflict between India and Pakistan continued to escalate, threatening regional stability. The 1965 war raged in the skies as well as on the ground. Both air forces launched raids on enemy airfields and infrastructure. Pakistan's American-made Sabres and starfighters clashed with India's numerically superior Hunters and Nats. Dogfights became daily events, with pilots on both sides earning fame and infamy. The Indian Nat earned the nickname Sabre Slayer. PAF's Alam claimed multiple kills in a single sortie, fueling legends and controversy. The air war was fierce, but neither side gained clear dominance. At sea, action was limited. The Indian Navy's carrier was in refit, while Pakistan's PNS Ghazi prowled the waters. The main naval action was the Pakistani bombardment of Dwarka, causing little damage but psychological impact. Both navies focused on patrols and protecting shipping lanes. The naval dimension was overshadowed by the intensity of ground and air battles. The war revealed the need for modernization in both air and naval forces. The lessons learned would shape future military strategies. The conflict's reach extended from land to sky to sea. As the war dragged on, global concern mounted. The Cold War powers, wary of escalation, imposed an arms embargo on both nations. The embargo hit Pakistan harder, reliant on American arms. The United Nations called for an immediate ceasefire. UN Secretary-General U Thant personally mediated between leaders. Mounting casualties and economic strain pushed both sides toward negotiation. On September 22, 1965, a ceasefire was agreed. After 17 days of fierce fighting, the guns finally fell silent. Both India and Pakistan claimed victory, but the war ended in stalemate. India gained ground in Sialkot and Kashmir. Pakistan captured territory in Cham and Kem Karan. Neither achieved its main objectives. The war was costly, thousands dead, tanks and aircraft lost, economies strained. The Soviet Union mediated peace talks in Tashkent in January 1966. Both sides agreed to withdraw to pre-war positions and restore diplomatic ties. The Tashkent Declaration was met with disappointment in both countries. Prime Minister Shastri's sudden death in Tashkent cast a shadow over the peace. The core issues, especially Kashmir, remained unresolved. The uneasy peace left tensions simmering beneath the surface. Amid destruction, stories of courage and compassion emerged. Soldiers on both sides showed remarkable bravery and sacrifice. Acts of kindness, helping wounded enemies, villagers aiding the displaced, offered hope. The plight of prisoners of war drew international attention. The exchange of POWs after Tashkent brought relief to many families. For countless families, the war meant anxiety, loss, and lifelong scars. These personal stories remind us of the true cost of conflict. Beyond strategy and politics, war is always a human tragedy. The 1965 war left a lasting mark on India and Pakistan. Both militaries learned hard lessons, spurring modernization and an arms race. In India, Shastri's leadership inspired unity. In Pakistan, Ayub Khan's popularity waned. The war deepened mistrust and hardened national identities. Displacement and economic hardship affected millions. The Kashmir dispute remained unresolved, fueling future conflicts. The dream of a peaceful South Asia seemed more distant. The war showed the limits of military power in solving deep-rooted disputes. Its legacy is a reminder of the immense human cost of war. Dialogue and diplomacy, not conflict, are the only path to lasting peace. The lessons of 1965 echo through history. The hope for peace endures even in the shadow of war.